You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain, pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane, pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less, your check as I'm chess, what's happening next, yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, it's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take your redemption. Just kill no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression, You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions and the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off, I'ma break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft, you can change lives, you create thoughts. Never waste time, you got one shot, you got one life. Better pop off, what do you like? Make a dream job, no 9-5, no mean boss. Just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where it is that you are seeing this from. I hope everything's good. If you can hear me, let me know down in the chat. I've got the mic on and I'm going to be as loud in it as I can. My grandmother's chihuahua is, I don't know, she's a little on edge or something this morning. So if you hear something in the background, that's what it is. It's just Sophie Ann. And, we just love her to death. If you're just joining us, we have been following the trial of Mark Redwine. Awesome. Good job, Gail. I'm so glad you got your shower fix. I hope the rest of your evening went a little bit better than during the day. But I greatly appreciate you being here with us. So we've been following the trial of Mark Redwine. His son, Dylan, went missing in November of 2012 after a court-ordered visitation. Let's cover up his poop-eating face. And if you weren't here before, where you saw these yucky pictures that this man has, go check that out. It's in the playlist labeled Dylan Redwine. And good, Gail, good. I'm so glad everything is much better for you. Okay. Yeah. Mark has issues. That's what I was saying. Mark is, he has, I don't know if it's a fetish. I don't know if it was blackmail. I don't know if anybody ever fully understood or found out, the context behind those photos. But I for sure think they did play a role in the death of Dylan, unfortunately. One thing I wanted to share with you guys before we get into testimony today, we have the cross-examination of Elaine Hall, which is Dylan's mom. My heart feels for her. She is such a strong woman, and to be able to get up there and show up for Dylan the way that she did, I'm so proud of her. Elaine, if you ever come across this, my heart goes out to you, dear. I can't imagine from one mom to the next. Okay, so let me show you what I found was a pretty good timeline. Let me get myself a little smaller here on the screen. And I just wanted to go through this timeline really quick. It is so hard to understand the diaper ick. And I just don't, that was almost a enjoyable moment. It kind of looked like, right? So Mark's not per se smiling and, just like in in heaven, but he's definitely not like throwing up, like he's doing it. So I feel like that's, I don't know. I can't do it. So again, I apologize for all of the background noise. It's just a chihuahua. She's good. All right. So let's take a look at this timeline here. This says November 18th of 2012, Dylan Redwine arrives to his father's on a court-ordered visit. Now, if you're just joining us or if this is the first time you've heard about the case, Dylan did not want to go stay with his dad at all. He had told his mom, he had told his brother, he had told his friends. His friends got up on the stand and testified in a previous live that we did. And they said Dylan didn't want to go. Matter of fact, I posted a video on TikTok. Go take a look at that, of his friend Adam. I think it was Adam. No, maybe it was Joseph. I'm sorry. And Joseph was like, no, he absolutely did not want to go see his dad. So this was a court-ordered visit that had taken place. We learned yesterday that it took place in September of 2012. Dylan went to go visit his dad in November. And again, against his will. So surveillance video shows Dylan Redwine and his father, Mark Redwine, at a Walmart. And Dylan, it was not seen or heard from again after that night. So that is the last time Dylan is seen on any type of video, surveillance, or anything was at that Walmart. According to the indictment, text messages revealed that Dylan Redwine did not want to stay with his father during his visit, and he had asked to stay with a friend on the night of his arrival. His father denied that request. So Dylan was going to go visit, or wanted to go visit and stay the night with Ryan Nava. Again, Dylan did not want to be there. So the second he got there and got off that plane and they arrived at Mark's house, Dylan's already on the phone with friends or on his iPod with friends and text plus, hey, can I come stay the night? And Ryan was actually on his way back, from a family outing. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Dad says no. So he's like, I'm going to be there first thing in the morning. He said, I'm good. You better have your ass up is what Dylan said. He said, you better be on there, there to open the door. And Dylan's like, I'm going to bang on the doors. Your grandma cool with me going to be there because you better be ready. And, no one ever heard from Dylan again. Dylan never made it over to Ryan Nava's house. So, Dylan Redwine's last phone activity or communication was at 9:37 p.m. that night, and that it was to Ryan Nava, I believe, and he testified. We saw a video of him as a child, and then we got to see him on the stand as an adult. Crazy how much time passed in this case, guys. There is hope for some of these cases of these missing children that, are coming up on 2 years now. There is. So November 19th of 2012, Dylan Redwine had made plans to visit a friend at 6:30 in the morning. That's Ryan Nava. But he never showed up. His friend sent him a text message at 6:46 asking, where are you? And he received no response. Mark Redwine said now here's his story and his chain of events, which nobody can fully, rule any of it out. Some of it they were able to prove that he did go talk to his lawyer. He did, make some phone calls. But really during this time, he was most likely disposing of Dylan's body and his remains and his belongings. So Mark Redwine left his home at 7:30 a.m. to run errands in Durango. He said this was the last time that he saw his son. So his recollection is he got up in the morning, because I can imagine that this is the way everything probably went, right? Can I go to Ryan's house? No, bro, you just got here. Like, you're here to see me. You're not here to see his friends or see your friends. No, you can't go. Well, and then, okay, well, I've got to go run some errands in the morning. I'll take you in the morning, because there was a distance, right? We've learned throughout testimony so far that there was nobody within walking distance for Dylan to go to. This is at Bayfield Lake up in Bayfield, Colorado, near Durango. It's up in the mountains. It's a remote location. And we heard Dylan's mom speak yesterday about there not being much for Dylan to do. And Dylan was bored up there. He didn't like to be up there. He was by himself a lot of times because Mark was a truck driver. So, let's see. So he said he went out to go run his errands, and Dylan was left there asleep. According to Mark, he tried to rouse him. He tried to wake him up. He tried everything he could. And as a teenage boy, he just, was sleeping through it, and he didn't want to get up. So Mark leaves to go do his errands and leaves Dylan there asleep. He says he returned home at 11:30 a.m. to find that Dylan Redwine is gone. He checks in with the boy's friends and notifies Dylan Redwine's mother, his ex-wife Elaine, that the boy is missing. And then at 6 p.m., he calls police to report Dylan missing, and search and rescue efforts begin. November 26th, search and rescue efforts are still underway. The FBI has now officially joined the search. Dylan's mother, Elaine, tells ABC News Radio that she is concerned that Mark may have something to do with her son's disappearance. Now, if you followed with us over the last, week, you know that Elaine was extremely suspicious of Mark from day one, from the very beginning. She said, it's really concerning to me, Mark, that I put our son on a plane and he's 6-something miles away, or 6-something hours away, and you're asking me where he's at. What did you do with him? Where was he at the last time you saw him? Et cetera, et cetera. Elaine was very suspicious of Mark from the get-go. She also says that her ex-husband was upset and that she had received primary custody of Dylan. November 27th, 2012, friends and family hold a vigil for Dylan. Mark Redwine makes his first public appearance. The next day, Mark tells a local paper he does not believe his son ran away because he had nothing to run away from. He loved his life. Everything was great. November 29th, La Plata County Sheriff's Office executed a search warrant on the home of Mark Redwine. So he went missing on the 18th, and by the 29th, they were searching Mark's home. June 27th of 2013. Notice some time has passed, and I believe it's about 7 months. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation confirms that bones found during a recent search belong to Dylan Redwine. The bones were found in a wooded area north of Bayfield Lake, about 10 miles from Mark Redwine's home. Just a moment. I'm gonna move the dog. Just a moment. Okay. Sorry, she was so distracting. And it was really hard for me to like focus with her in the back. And I know that was awful and so loud. But anyway, sorry. We love you, Sophie, but you got to go. Let's see. So about 7 months later, bones are found behind Mark Redwine's home about 10 miles in the Vallecito Lake area up in the mountains. Mark Redwine tells Denver Post he was blindsided to hear the news. June 19th, 2015. Mind you, this was November 2012. Here we are, June 29th, 2015. Elaine Redwine files a wrongful death lawsuit against her ex-husband. That lawsuit was later dismissed due to the state of limitations. Oh, good. I'm so glad you couldn't hear her. Maybe the microphone helped, but like I could. It was about to drive me insane. August 19th of 2015. Mark Redwine is named as a person of interest in Dylan's death by the La Plata County Sheriff's Department. Dylan Redwine's cause of death was also changed from undetermined to homicide. July 22nd of 2017, Mark is arrested and charged with murder in connection with his son's death. We watched that video. Go back, check the playlist. The indictment says blood belonging to Dylan Redwine was found in Redwine's home. He is charged with second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. So that's just kind of a little, timeline of events that we had, and I wanted to share that with you guys. That way you can just kind of see how long it actually took. Like I said, there's hope for Brandy Neal. I don't know if Summer Wells's family really, wants to find her. I know that sounds awful, but it just kind of seems weird over there. But that's 110 Ben Hill Road. But there is hope. This was a long time. A long 7 months it took to find anything. And you guys saw the evidence photos. Go take a look at that again in the playlist. We looked at the little itty bitty teeny tiny pieces of evidence that was found up in that woods. And, there's no telling. There's no telling. All right, let's get right into this. This is Elaine Hall, Dylan's mother. This is the trial of Mark Redwine. We watched the prosecution go and, examine her and ask her questions. Now we get to see the defense. Now, keep in mind, it's going to make you mad, I'm sure. There's going to be stuff that they say and stuff that's quite aggravating on our end. Just know they're trying to do their job. And yeah, we don't, we know what Mark did. All right. If you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe. That way you'll know when we go live again, and share this out so that more people can learn about Dylan. Here we go, guys.
With Mr. Doherty, starting with one.
Don't use your expensive AC until you've seen what this new invention can do. It cools down any room in just 90 seconds for almost zero cost. An ingenious college kid from Phoenix just destroyed the billion-dollar.
One of the things you spoke about the divorce and kind of how long that went. Remember talking about that?
Yes.
And safe to say, divorce proceedings started in 2005, right?
I believe so, yes.
And I think you agreed with Mr. Doherty's description of the divorce as less than amiable. And actually, that's mine. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
And the divorce proceedings actually went on for years, correct?
It was a long time.
And without getting into the specifics, there were several issues that were litigated from 2005 through the summer of 2012. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
And you even mentioned one of those issues on direct about one of the issues that got litigated was the house on Windmill, right?
Correct.
And who was going to wind up with the house and some other assets, correct?
Yes.
And that litigation went on for literally years, correct?
Literally years, yes.
And as the proceedings developed, divorce pleadings were filed, correct?
Yes.
And then there was a legal separation, correct?
Yes.
And then the legal separation was finalized into a divorce in about 2008, right?
Yes.
And even after that final order of the divorce in 2008 coming out, there was still litigation after that, right?
There was.
And after all that litigation of these other issues, there were the orders regarding where Dylan would reside and parenting time that came down in 2012, correct?
Yes.
And you told the jury that for the vast majority of these proceedings, you were actually living in the Bayfield area, correct?
I was living in the Windmill House, yes.
Right. And is that in Bayfield or around there?
The physical address was Durango, but it was in Bayfield School District, so.
Okay. And then you moved to essentially Colorado Springs in July, August of 2012, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it was shortly thereafter that you filed a motion with the court for Dylan to move with you to Colorado Springs, correct?
Yes.
And that request was filed with the court here in Durango shortly before Mr. Redwine and Dylan went on their trip to the east to see baseball, correct?
I can't recall specifically when it was entered or.
Yes, Gail, she's giving him looks. She wants to scream and yell and be like, I know Mark did this. Mark was an evil, mean man and blah, blah, blah. You know, I am no doubt. That's why I said I am so proud of her. She totally showed up for Dylan because so many years went by. So many years went by where she knew, and I didn't play part of an advisement hearing, but I may because I found it very relevant. This was when they were going to the judge actually lowered his bond. I think he was set at $1 million, and he lowered to like 750,000 or something like that. And they were talking about him being a flight risk and this, that, and the other. But his previous stuff came in as aggravating, factors and. She was like, he's been sending us threatening emails. We already know he was showing up at her work. He did that interview where he was like, yeah, I know where she works. That's, I don't know why she tries to hide it, because you're crazy and you were evil and you were mean to her. That's why. But yeah, no doubt she's given the defense looks like, and don't, Mark's sitting right over there as well. I do like this courtroom to where the, when yesterday when she identified Mark as the defendant, she had to kind of like look up and around and point over. So in some courtrooms, that witness stand is staring like right at the defendant, and that can be quite nerve-wracking and anxiety ridden moment for these people, because like that's a lot of times your abuser, or in this case, he murdered her son. Like, oh, yeah. So anyway, I'm glad he's kind of around the corner, but she wants to yell and scream, and yeah, I'm sure. Here we go.
Or requested, but yeah, I mean, it was done around the July, August 2012 timeframe.
Okay. And safe to say, you recall that Mark Redwine and his attorney objected to that, correct?
Yes.
And you asked to move Dylan to Colorado Springs. Mr. Redwine and his attorney objected, and then I think you guys responded to that objection, and there was eventually a court hearing, correct?
Yes.
And while that was going on, you also filed an emergency motion to enroll Dylan in schools in Colorado Springs while this issue is pending, correct?
Yes.
So in September of 2012, there were that was going on.
And really quick, never mind the fact that she's here for Dylan. We're not here to talk about this. Like, stop. He just needs to distract the jury. That's the defense's, sole purpose over here, because there's overwhelming evidence stacked up against his client, and all he can do is just divert the jury's attention, their attention span, their thought process, and make them think about something different. Make them think that perhaps Mark didn't do this. But anyway, he did.
A number of issues continuing to be litigated in this divorce, correct?
Yes.
And by and large, those issues were concerning where Dylan would live, correct?
Yes.
Where he would go to school.
Right.
And whom he would live with.
Yes.
You or Mr. Redwine.
Yes.
And ultimately, as you testified on direct, the court ruled that Dylan would live with you in Colorado Springs, correct?
Yes.
And the court also ruled that Dylan would attend school in the district where you were residing or thereabouts. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the court also made findings about what kind of visitation, what kind of parenting rights Mr. Redwine would have as well, correct?
Yes.
This is what happened to my blood sugar after eating strawberries, and this is what happened after eating grapes.
And those included a court order that Dylan would go to Mr. Redwine's house in Vallecito for the Thanksgiving vacation days, correct?
Yes.
And that day that the order came down saying where Dylan would live, where he would go to school, that you would have to visit Mr. Redwine on Thanksgiving, that same day, you know that Mark bought him a ticket to come to Durango on an airplane, correct?
I do recall that, yes.
Okay. So the order comes down, you win, he loses, Dylan's going to Colorado Springs, Dylan's coming to Vallecito for Thanksgiving. The day that order comes down, Mr. Redwine buys Dylan a plane ticket to come out for Thanksgiving that same exact day.
I believe so, yes.
And safe to say that proceeding in September regarding where Dylan would live and attend school, that was what we call a contested hearing, correct?
Yes.
That was not agreed to by you and Mr. Redwine.
Correct.
And that was litigated by you and Mr. Redwine.
Yes.
And Mr. Redwine and his legal team litigated that issue very vociferously, very hard, correct?
They did.
In the lead up to the Thanksgiving visit, you testified on direct that you got to see and observe Dylan's enthusiasm or lack thereof to go to Vallecito, safe to say?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously you were living with Dylan at the time, so you got to see him probably just about every day.
I saw him every day, yes.
And based upon those observations and conversations that you had with Dylan regarding the visit in Thanksgiving, you were left with some impressions and some concerns, quite frankly, about Dylan coming to Vallecito to visit Mr. Redwine, correct?
Yes.
And from your interactions with Dylan, you knew at least one thing, and that was that Dylan was excited to come to Bayfield, Durango, at a bare minimum to see his friends, correct?
Yes.
However, he wasn't excited to stay at his father's house, correct?
Correct.
And your understanding from your conversations with Dylan is the reason he was not excited to, one of the reasons he was not excited to stay at his father's house is it was in Vallecito, kind of out in the sticks.
That's one of the reasons, yes.
One of the reasons. And you even said on direct, I believe, that because the house is so isolated, right?
Correct.
Isolated, out in the sticks. And also, from your understanding and living in the area, you know that the house in Vallecito on County Road 500 was far away from his friends in the city of Bayfield, correct?
Far away from his friends and everything else, yes.
Right. Because it's literally the house in Vallecito, Mr. Redwine's house, is literally at the end of the road before the campground up there, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you've even characterized that the location of that house as being in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
So Dylan's excited to see his friends, not excited to be in the middle of nowhere, not excited to be far away from Bayfield, from everything in Bayfield, correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct that, and permission, I need to look at some of the exhibits, permission to approach?
Yes.
While you were watching videos on YouTube, today so far I've already made $10.7 thousand, and yesterday I made about $5,000 doing something called e-farming. Now, this is something you're already doing every single day. It's just you don't know you can actually make money with it too. Click somewhere on this ad and I'll show you exactly what e-farming is and exactly how completely average people like you and me are making money with it right now and are retiring from their jobs to travel the world, have more lifestyle, more freedom, and basically spend more time with their family doing things they love while making money.
You testified on direct that this bag of items is something that was requested of you from law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm in a weird place, so I'm holding a big bag. Where do you need me to be?
Actually, a bit up over here by the microphone.
Okay. And
Of course, there was a an ad. My apologies. I had to go check on the dog.
again, you were asked by law enforcement to provide a number of personal items of Dylan, correct?
Yes.
And it sounded like on direct examination, it was not you who collected those items, is that correct?
Correct.
And those items were collected by another family member. Did you say it was Dylan's stepdaughter?
Yes, my stepdaughter.
Okay. And what is her name?
Ashley Hall. At the time, it was Ashley Hall.
Okay. And law enforcement came to you because you're the mother of Dylan, and asked you to collect the items that are in this bag, correct?
Yes.
And did you in turn ask your stepdaughter Ashley to do that?
My husband actually called her, I believe. But we were in Durango, and I didn't want to go home until I had Dylan with me.
Okay. And did you ever get to talk to Ashley about the collection of these items?
Yes.
And did you tell her how to do it?
Yes, I told her to grab like his pillow and blankets and his clothes and Yes.
And did you give her any other instruction?
I really can't remember. I mean, I was pretty frantic. I don't recall.
And permission to open the bag and
Go ahead.
and those items included the pillow, correct?
Yes.
The Broncos blanket, correct?
Yes.
It looks like that there's several other items in here as well, correct?
Yes.
Your understanding, there's a pillowcase in here as well? You know what else is in here?
I know that there's a bag with a lot of his clothes, and the pillowcase is on the pillow.
Permission to put these on the table in front of you?
Go ahead.
It looks like there's a paper bag in here. Do you have any idea what that is?
No.
Okay. Let me pause real quick for just a second. Earlier, yesterday, you saw that they brought out that pillow with the pillowcase. They asked her how she knew what it was, et cetera, et cetera. Mark was asked, and again, it's been a while since I followed this case. That's why we're kind of doing it together. Have a little refresher. Mark was asked to provide something for the search dogs, the search and rescue dogs, to have Dylan's scent on it. And he gave them a pillow that he said Dylan had slept on that night, that Dylan was sleeping on when Mark went to run his errands at 6:37 in the morning. We know that Dylan didn't go to sleep that night, that Dylan was most likely murdered prior to being able to go to sleep. So there was controversy around him giving that particular article as, the scent article, because it was a tactic to throw them off of the scent, to, hinder the investigation, to cover it up.
It looks like there's an empty plastic bag in here as well.
It may have been what the items were in when we transported them. I don't know specifically.
Your Honor, just for the record, that's the same plastic bag that I just took the Broncos blanket out of.
Okay, thank you.
I'll stipulate to that. That's and you said earlier that there was a bag with several of his items or clothing in them, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it looks like an open paper bag here, correct?
Yes.
And looks like we got a towel that looked to be Dylan's.
Yes.
How do you know that's Dylan?
I mean, it's our house towel, and I know it came from our house, and it was in Dylan's room.
Okay. How do you know it was in his room?
From Ashley.
And it looks as though there's a hoodie or a zipper hoodie as well, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And it looks, should we take a lunch break?
Well, we're going to in just a second. I was hoping to get through this.
Okay,
I'm okay. Just emotional.
I understand. Safe to say there's several items in this bag, correct?
Yes.
that were collected by Ashley?
Yes.
Did you know that in Texas, rifles can be carried in public without a license? Whereas in Florida, no open carrying is allowed, except in unique situations like in hunting or fishing. Hi, I'm Colion Noir, a pro 2A attorney with over 2 million YouTube subscribers.
And placed, to the best of your knowledge, by Ashley in this bag, right?
Yes.
And then you met Ashley, was it in Alamosa, and then you drove the bag here?
Okay, sorry, I had to give Sophie her medicine. I I think that stuff, I don't know. I did not hear if it came from Mark's house or her house. I just know that that is the, kind of the center issue with the pillowcase, because that was what was given. And then I think she maybe brought stuff, or had that girl that she's talking about, Ashley, had her put together stuff, I think, from her house and send down or something. They're going to get into it, but I really wanted to mention that pillowcase so that you guys, kind of would know, what was going on there.
My husband met Ashley in Alamosa.
Okay.
I was here in Durango still.
I'm prepared to stop for lunch.
Okay, and that's fine. You just leave it there.
Well, I think I think possibly Mark provided the stuff and then they were not finding anything. And then that's why they were like, but because we're up here, like we know he came here. He should be here. We should be able to find something, some sort of a smell, or something of him. And then I think they asked Mom for stuff. And then she had the family member put stuff together, if I remember correctly.
Are you done with the bag, though?
I believe so.
Okay, great. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that one of you has an appointment they need to be at over the lunch hour, so we're going to stop a little bit early. Please remember my admonitions. I'm not going to read them to you. You probably know them by heart. Just make sure you don't do any research on this case. You don't talk about it. You don't let anybody talk to you about the case. We will start up again. Let's go ahead and start up again at 1:30, and you'll need to be back whenever Cindy tells you. So with that, everybody rise for the jury.
Okay, let me get this set up for you here. Bear with me just a moment. Sophie is back in the house, so if you hear the if you hear the noise, just let it go. I do want to play this real quick for us. This is
Or whatever investigator you want to have do that. So
this is an interview from when
No objection to that
Dylan's
procedure. No.
remains were recovered.
And I'm also going to approach and just put the Exhibit 4 disc up with the other exhibits. It ended up back on my table, so I was going to put it back.
okay, thank you. All right, we'll see y'all get here a little bit before 1:30, please.
And Judge, I think Mr. Johnson covered this. Did you want to go and look at the living room layout?
Oh, I totally forgot about it. I'll probably do that now. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Judge.
Right. We might send Les to go with you guys now. Yeah.
Dylan Redwine found. After 7 months of searching for the missing teenager, his family getting the news they never wanted to hear. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation confirming that remains found during the search last weekend belonged to Dylan. This story still developing tonight. 7 News with team coverage. Reporter Mark Stewart with more on the details of the last 7 months. But we start with 7 News reporter Tack Landrock in Durango tonight with the latest on what the sheriff is calling a homicide investigation.
The sheriff's office would not confirm whether or not they have a suspect in this case. Right now, only saying that they're not naming one. Now, the reason the sheriff went back up to Middle Mountain is because they said they wanted to retrace their footsteps. Take a look at this map right here. You can see where Dylan's father lives. That's right where that A is. Dylan's body was found right here. The sheriff's office tells me basically that they were able to see Dylan's father's house from where the body was found, but it's about an 8 to 10 mile drive up a windy road. Now take a look at some of these pictures that the sheriff's office down here sent us of that 5-day search. They will not say whether or not they found what evidence they found in this case, but will only confirm that Dylan's remains were tested and it is him. Dylan went missing back when he came to Durango back in November. The sheriff's office says they're treating this as a homicide case.
Does it look like he was transported there or he walked there? Do you have enough information from your investigation yet to determine that?
The information that we have indicates there was no reason whatsoever for Dylan to go to Middle Mountain, and we have no indication whatsoever that he did so on his own.
The sheriff's office says that both of the parents were in Durango today, and they are cooperating with this investigation. Reporting live from Durango, Tack Landrock, 7 News.
Now, the search for Dylan Redwine began 7 months ago. He disappeared while visiting his father over Thanksgiving. Our team coverage continues with 7 News reporter Mark Stewart with a look at the investigation thus far. Mark?
Mike, this was a very well publicized case. Dylan's picture became very familiar to people here in Colorado. The search for a teenager with professionals and volunteers working side by side.
Samson and Thomas.
After months of searching through brush and waterways, Dylan Redwine's remains were eventually found here in this rugged terrain 7 months after he disappeared. A chalk art tribute now lines the neighborhood and monument where Dylan lived with his mother.
We're all in this as a community, and that we're there to support them.
This mystery first unraveled on November 18th when Dylan flew to Durango for a court-ordered visit with his father. That night, this surveillance video shows him on a shopping trip. The next day, Dylan went missing as his father was running errands. 5 days later, search dogs picked up his scent at the Vallecito Reservoir. On April 24th, part of the reservoir is drained, but still no sign of Dylan. It was during this most recent search in the high altitude where Dylan was found, an area off limits until the snow melted, an area less than 10 miles from his father's home. And late today, I talked to an administrator from Dylan's school system. She said she is just sick after hearing this news. They want to offer resources to his classmates. This is obviously a very heavy-duty emotional burden. They're just trying to figure out the best way to handle all of this since it's summer and school is not in session. I'm Mark Stewart, 7 News.
So, of course, Sophie gets loud just as soon as I bring her back. Anyway, we're good. We're good. All right, let's get back to the trial. They are taking a lunch break on their end. And go. Here we go.
Dive into a new season and shop the best.
Oh, she's so loud, Gail. I'm so shocked you can't hear her.
Event. Warm up your home.
It is what it
big on
is.
collections from every room.
She's living her best life, and It's okay. She just has some issues. Alrighty, here we go, guys. Let me know if you can hear everything in the chat. Hit like if you haven't already.
Okay, we can be seated. So I did get word that one of the jurors made an appointment thinking we'd be done at earlier in the afternoon on Friday because of what I stated before. So I think what we'll do on Friday, despite what I told counsel before lunch, I seem to keep changing my mind on this stuff. We'll take a 45-minute break for lunch on Friday. So if you'd rather, it's going to be really tight if you go out and buy something. If you want to bring something in, that's fine to eat over the lunch hour or just a snack or whatever you want to do. But we'll take 45 minutes. We'll work for another 2 hours after that. Be out of here by 2:45. And that should work, I would think, for the juror and make up the time that we have lost. So with that, come on back up, Ms. Hall. You are still under oath? Mr. Bogan.
Thank you. Ms. Hall, I'd respectfully turn your attention to already admitted exhibit People's number 8. It's the email. And I think it's on the table in front of you.
You want to get it for her?
Yeah, by all means. I didn't.
Thank you.
Before the break, we spoke about, or you spoke about some of Dylan's concerns about going to Vallecito. Remember talking about that?
Yes.
And those included it was far away from friends, at the end of the road, in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And another concern that he articulated to you, if I understand correctly, is that he found himself at times just sitting in Mr. Redwine's house, just sitting around the house not doing anything, right?
Yes.
And that concern of his became a concern of yours, as we know from looking at People's Exhibit 8, correct?
Yes.
Because in one of your emails to Mr. Redwine, you stated, I hope you all will be able to do something while he's there. He's not real thrilled about the idea of sitting around your house. Is that what the exhibit that's been admitted says? It's on page 2, I believe, of the exhibit at the top.
Yes.
Okay. And we also know that prior to the Thanksgiving trip that Dylan had been to visit Mr. Redwine twice, correct? That
Yes.
summer/early fall. And one of those trips was during Labor Day, correct?
Yes.
And that was a trip where arrangements were made by Mr. Redwine, correct?
Yes.
And Mark, Mr. Redwine had communicated through Dylan to you about those arrangements, correct?
I really can't recall specifically how the arrangements were made.
Okay. And as you testified on direct, you've spoken to tons of detectives and investigators and law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And one of those law enforcement officers was FBI agent Joseph Funaro and FBI agent Margaret Rusin. And you spoke to them on February 11th, 2013. And I know you're processing a lot of dates and a lot of information here, but does that sound by and large correct?
I remember meeting with FBI. I just don't remember specifically when.
Do you recall telling agents Funaro and Rusin that Mark contacted Elaine for the Labor Day trip and arrangements were made for Dylan to fly to Durango? Remember telling them that?
Not specifically, but I mean, it's very possible that I could have.
And do you remember telling them Mark made contact through Dylan?
Again, I mean, I don't remember specifically.
And do you think, looking at Agent Funaro's report from that date, page 8 of 11, might jog your recollection, refresh your recollection to making those statements?
We can look at them, sure.
Right. Permission to approach.
Yes.
Challenge yourself for her.
Okay.
Having reviewed the report from Agent Funaro, does that refresh your recollection to making the statements that arrangements were made and that Mr. Redwine communicated through Dylan?
Yes.
Okay. Permission to approach and collect.
Yes.
Again, focusing on the Labor Day trip, you obviously got to see Dylan after that trip and live with him and talk to him, right?
I did.
And he was pleased with that trip, correct?
Yes, he was able to hang out with his friends, and he seemed to have a good time. The river was not so cold, so we spent some time on the river. And
Right. That was. Go ahead.
he seemed okay.
Right. And those are the two things that you remember. He enjoyed the trip over Labor Day, got to see his friends, got to hang out by the river because he was still able to do that, go to the river.
Yes.
And I'm going to hand you People's Exhibit 6, if I may approach.
You may.
And I'm going to respectfully ask you to turn to page 2 of People's 6. And again, People's 6 is the bubble chat, the text messages between yourself and Mr. Redwine on certain dates, correct?
Yes.
And one of the messages you received from Mr. Redwine that you testified to on direct, the first blue box down on the left. I'll ask you to read that if that's okay.
The first blue box?
On the left, yes, ma'am. First
Elaine.
blue box from the top.
Elaine, I'm wondering if you have heard from Dylan. I've been trying to reach him all afternoon.
Okay. And you got that text, and you remember getting that text, probably like no other text you've ever gotten.
I do.
And that text came in at about 16:32 military time. Can you make that out on the People's Exhibit?
It didn't print very well, but I mean, it sounds about right.
Right. You remember going back and forth with Mr. Doherty, and he said,
Yeah,
we got a bad printer. Yeah. Okay. And what we know also is that 16:32 for folks not in the military is 4:32 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after you got that message, as you testified, you made a number of phone calls after that, correct?
Yes.
And some of those phone calls, as you testified to, were the sheriff's department, correct?
Yes.
And you even tried to call Dylan's phone as well, correct?
Yes.
And at 5:02 on the same day, you tried to call your attorney, Amber Harrison, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Redwine calls at 4:32. You called your divorce attorney, Amber Harrison, at 2 minutes after 5.
I don't know the time specifically, but we needed a place to stay, and she was where we.
Right. And you've described her as a friend, but she was also your attorney.
She was.
And she had actually represented you in the custody and divorce issues regarding your son Dylan, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she was at that time as well. And that's a poorly asked question. She represented you on that matter in August and September of that year.
Yes, she did.
Now, another thing you spoke about on direct examination when asked by Mr. Doherty was whether or not you had spoken to the media, correct?
Yes.
And you said that you had in fact spoken to the media, right?
Yes.
And that was because your son was missing. You wanted to bring attention to the situation, correct?
Yes.
And it looks like you had to think that through. Is there something else going on there?
No. It's just that everybody kind of arranged this for me, so I was just kind of following protocol as to what others around me thought would be good. So, like, the media would contact me, and I'd have somebody else kind of reach out to them, and then I'd reach out to them at that point after they reached out. So I had a friend of mine, Denise.
Denise Hess?
Yes.
And
she was kind of the middle person with the media.
Certainly not for all the media, I take it.
If you've been injured in an accident and it wasn't your fault, we can help. Check us out at selflaw.net.
Our choices shape our futures. The future of...
For most of it.
Okay. So, and describe for the jury who Denise Hess is, how you know her, just what your
Elaine had a fantastic group of people around her that really embraced her and, gave her, support and help with whatever she needed help with. Because Mark was not involved doing anything. Again, huge red flag in these cases when, a child's reported missing, the person that reports them or is, suspected does absolutely nothing to try to find them. So she was being bombarded. This was 2012. Media was growing and becoming, more of a trend with these cases, these true crime cases. And she needed the assistance, and she'd become very close to her divorce attorney, who was a female, who was a friend. And she, I think was the one who actually bagged up, the pillow and the blanket and like all of that stuff. And the defense, I think, is trying to kind of, hammer that like you didn't do this stuff. The people around you did. Yeah, the people around her did, because they supported this mom who was going through the most traumatic time that she probably ever will, go through. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm really glad that she had a good support system around her, because she probably wouldn't be able to be who she is and where she's at today if she wouldn't have had that
personal relationship is.
Denise was a friend of mine. Her son and my older son went to middle school and high school together, and she worked for the Pine River Times. So when I knew that we had to do more, that we weren't within the first couple of days, we couldn't locate Dylan. I contacted her to see what she could do to help me get attention for Dylan, bring him home.
And one of the things that's clear is that in the text messages that you went back and forth with Mr. Redwine is that you even tell him it's so hard for me not to suspect you right now, correct?
Yes.
And in your interactions with the media, you wanted to bring attention to the situation with your son and bring attention to your suspicions of Mr. Redwine.
My goal was to bring Dylan home.
Right. And in doing that, you wanted to bring attention to Dylan and bring attention to your suspicions of Mr. Redwine, correct?
My intention was to bring Dylan home.
And you would...
It wasn't to belittle or besmirch or anything like that. It was to get Dylan's name and face out there in case anybody in this country has seen him.
Right. And one of the things you did as part of that series of actions is you organized a protest in front of Mr. Redwine's house, correct?
No, I did not organize a protest. It was not me that organized it.
You attended a protest in front of Mr. Redwine's house.
I did.
And who organized the protest?
You know, I'm not really sure. I really don't know.
Who invited you to the protest?
I don't think it was like a written invitation. It was just everybody's going up to Mark's house so we can try and get some answers. And I think Denise was part of that.
Okay. Denise Hess, your friend,
yes,
whose son played with your son, was
they went to school together.
They went to school together. Was one of the architects of the protest in front of Mr. Redwine's house.
I believe so, yes.
And that's the protest that you and Corey attended, correct?
We did.
Permission to approach with Defense Exhibit 1872, please.
Sure. Don't get too scared. Those numbers don't mean there's 1,872 defense exhibits. I don't think. Yes, it was.
Have you had a chance to look at that?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate representation
Yes.
of the protest that you attended in front of Mr. Redwine's house?
I'm not sure I would call it a protest, but yes.
What would you call it?
A gathering?
Okay. It's a gathering, but there's several people there. But move to admit Defense 1872.
Any objection?
Your Honor, I'm not, sorry, not sure the proper foundation's been laid, but I have no objection to this coming to evidence.
All right. It's admitted. Do you want to publish it?
Permission to publish?
Yes.
I don't know if the TV's on.
TV needs to be turned on, probably.
Does that look like the 1872 in front of you, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. And this is what you've described as a gathering in front of Mr. Redwine's house, correct?
Yes.
And that was in February of 2013, that winter?
That sounds about right.
Okay. And obviously the photo portrays, are you in that photo? Do you see your sign and yourself?
Yes,
Okay. So you're there. Do you see your other son, Corey, there as well?
I do.
Okay. And safe to say those are people in front of Mr. Redwine's house with signs and placards for the gathering, as you described it, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What's up, guys? My name is Mike, and I'm here to get stoned. Today, I'm here to...
How long did that event go for? Do you recall?
I will say kudos, Mom and Corey and whoever else organized that. That is definitely amazing to see. You can kind of see it there on the screen. That is a picture of what Elaine is calling a gathering. Great word. I love how she did that. And the defense is calling it a protest that was organized out in front of Mark's home due to the suspicion that the way he had been acting, the details surrounding the case, etc. They're out there with their signs. Ooh, yeah, go Mom. Go, Mom. I love it.
Cool.
It was pretty cold out that day, so an hour, maybe.
And again, it's your recollection that Denise Hess, your friend who's the journalist at the Times, is that the Pine River Times?
Yes,
That she was one of the architects of this.
I believe so, yes. It was kind of hazy, but yeah, I think she was part of that, yeah.
I'm going to take that down. We're going to go one. Was Denise Hess the architect of your appearances on national television,
Yes,
including the Dr. Phil show, as you acknowledged on Direct?
yes,
And was she the architect of you going on the broadcast True Crime Radio?
yes,
And was she the architect of you going on several news channels?
yes.
And safe to say, you told a lot of people about what was going on with Dylan and his disappearance, correct?
A lot of people?
Yes, ma'am.
I spoke to a lot of people.
Right.
I told everybody who would listen that my son is missing.
Right. And you also told a lot of people that you believed Mr. Redwine was responsible, correct?
I'm not sure I said that, but I believed then that he was the last person to see Dylan, and he had no answers for us, and he was refusing to ask or answer any questions or help us find Dylan, and it was frustrating.
But my question is, you told a lot of people that you thought he was responsible for Dylan's disappearance, correct?
I'm not sure I would say it like that, no.
Okay.
Can I see both counsel just for a second?
Absolutely, Gail. It's crazy to me that he wants to bring it up and be in the forefront that they didn't look anywhere else, right? That their suspicion was immediately on Mark Redwine, and that there was no other possibility in the minds of Elaine and Corey and law enforcement. When if you listen to her words, she's saying the fact that he was the last person to see Dylan, he was the adult responsible for Dylan, and he had no answers, nor was he even willing or attempting or trying to answer. She tells him multiple times, we saw it in the emails and the text communications back and forth, you're so nonchalant about this. It's dumbfounding. And like Gail said, duh, you're going to tell everybody you can. I'm sure to this day she talks about Dylan as much as she can because that's her baby. And Mark, for taking him away. I'm with you on that. I'll go take my dogs out too. We'll just take a little intermission. Alrighty, thank you for your patience. That was a brief little break. Those of you with pups, you understand. And here we go. They are at a sidebar, so there is no sound at the moment.
Ready to be an e-commerce pioneer? Our baked-in premium plugins give you the best in
Yeah, I'm going to make a record first and instruct the jury, but then I will. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to make sure that we don't have any problems with this trial, so I am directing Mr. Doherty to speak to Ms. Hall about certain legal matters that she needs to remember during her testimony and her cross-examination. So,
Your Honor, just for the record, that's with consent of counsel.
that's correct. We talked about that up at the bench.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I proceed?
Please.
Ms. Hall, we were talking about whether or not you had told a lot of different people, a lot of different sources that you believed Mr. Redwine was responsible for Dylan's disappearance. Remember talking about that a few moments ago?
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is that you had told a lot of people that you believed Mr. Redwine was responsible, correct?
A lot of people is pretty general, but okay. I mean, I did speak with, media, friends, family, about my son and, that he came to Durango and he never came home.
And since you're equivocating, you testified about...
Objection, Your Honor.
And your objection is?
Counsel has a question. I would propose that it be asked as opposed to defining what the witness is doing.
Withdrawn.
Okay. Thank you.
Based upon your last answer, you've testified about Mr. Redwine previously, correct? In other civil matters, correct?
I testified against him?
You've testified in court proceedings, correct?
I have testified in court proceedings, like,
Regarding you and Mr. Redwine, correct?
yes, I find your answer or your questions to be very generic, so I'm trying to.
I know. You've testified about this before on June 11th, 2014, correct? In El Paso County. I'm sorry for interrupting.
In El Paso County. Yes.
Okay.
If that was the date. I don't recall the date specifically, but.
Okay. And again, you've told the jury that that's not how you would put it, that you've told a lot of people that you believe Mr. Redwine is responsible, correct?
I've always said that I believe that he had a hand in Dylan's disappearance, yes.
Okay. And you've told that to a lot of people.
Okay, sure. I mean,
You don't have to go anymore. They know your answer.
thank you.
You don't need to ask it anymore.
And you've gone on national television and iterated that opinion, correct?
Yes.
And you've iterated that opinion to law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And you've iterated that opinion to Facebook platforms, correct?
Yes.
And was Denise Hess the architect of your communications on Facebook as well?
Sometimes I really,
It was the greatest time of my life. Like, I'm not even being dramatic.
tried to stay away from Facebook because it was very emotional, and I didn't want to get into the social media tit for tat. So my involvement in Facebook was pretty minimal.
Okay. But you did just acknowledge that you had told people on a Facebook platform you thought Mr. Redwine was responsible, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall what platforms those were where you iterated your opinion that Mr. Redwine was responsible for Dylan's disappearance?
Not specifically, because I never really went out to like a page or anything and said, you know, he's responsible. I made comments on a post or something, but.
So do you recall if you made those comments on the Facebook page, Warriors for Dylan?
No, I don't recall.
Do you recall if you made those comments on a Facebook page, Journey to Justice?
No, I don't recall. I don't.
Did you make those comments to the Facebook page, Collective and Objective Voice for Dylan?
Honestly, it was so long ago, I don't remember.
Do you recall making any comments on the Facebook page, Arrest Mark Redwine?
No.
Do you recall making any comments on Arrest and Prison Mark Redwine Facebook page?
No.
As the case went on, you had several meetings with law enforcement, obviously, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, at times, law enforcement would make arrangements to have a
Okay, hang on. I gotta see. Hold on. We gotta see if that's a thing. Hold on. Arrest Mark Redwine is what they said. Facebook page. Okay, hang on. I gotta go check. I feel like I did this when it first happened. What'd they say? Arrest Mark Redwine? Arrest Mark Redwine. See if that's a page. Oh, it's a real page with 1.7. Hold on, let me show you guys. That cover. Okay, here we go. Check this out. 1.7 members. It is our opinion that on 11/18/12, Mark Redwine murdered his son Dylan, 13, more than 4 years later. I don't know. It doesn't say anything else right there. You should have watched this first. Oh, here we go. Question mark. I was just wondering how you will react when you are confronted with the physical evidence during your trial. No, not your couch or your truck or the Nerf football. I'm talking about Dylan's remains. His skull, which used to have a mop of golden hair and big blue eyes and a handsome freckled face attached to it before you turned him into a skeleton. His little bones, which used to have flesh and blood attached to them until you took a happy, living, breathing boy and fed him to the animals. I hope you take a good long look at the scraps of your son. But I bet you don't even care. I just want you to know that I do. The jury will care too. That was September 12th of 2017. Wow. This one says, "Hi, Marky boy. How's my favorite murderer doing? How was the Labor Day barbecue at the LPC jail? Oh, that's right. They don't have one. Well, I hope you enjoyed your bologna and on Wonder Bread. I heard they put the kibosh on your regular diet." So now we begin the portion of this legal proceeding that I like to call motion sickness. Fully expected, and no motion you make, no matter how frivolous, will surprise anyone. I really have no idea how your attorney can demand that the LPCSO violate your First Amendment rights by not allowing you to speak to visitors who are accepted by you. I mean, you already have the right to refuse to see any visitor you don't want to see. Attorneys all over the country must be laughing their asses off at that one. I mean, all he has to do is tell you to shut up, and we all know how well you follow instructions from your attorneys. Nothing will ever bring Dylan back, but still, Mark, you should see how relieved and outright giddy people are to see you suffering captivity in that tiny cell. Wow. One step at a time, though. The cheers that will erupt when the jury foreman says guilty as charged to both counts will be heard around the world. Dang. Oh, Mark, I am so sorry I missed your birthday yesterday, but I did get you something I think you'll really like. This is a year's supply of microwave cooking bags for your favorite meal. I hope you accept my apology for being late and accept this gift with the esteem intended. Oh. Those are poop bags. The internet is ruthless. Oh my goodness. Wow. Look at these pictures of this guy. That's like he's strange. There you go. Queen Petty, I don't think you're in here, but if you are, there you go. Him in handcuffs. Wow. There he is, guys. Wow. I can only imagine what he looked like at the time. Look at little Dylan. Oh my goodness. We love you, buddy. Oh. Justice for you, bud. That's why we're doing this. All right, guys, here we go.
A special meeting with you to let you know what was going on with the case, correct?
Yes.
And at those times, they would inform you what they could about what was going on with the investigation, correct?
Never to my satisfaction, but yes.
Right, and you actually grew frustrated with that process, right?
I did.
Because you wanted to know.
Wanted to know where my son was, yes.
And as this case progressed, you got to know some of the investigators pretty well, correct?
Would you like to earn 6 figures a year writing for brands that you love? This is Kristen. She earns $140,000 a year.
I don't know what you mean by pretty well, but yes, I mean,
You became close with some of the investigators
yes.
because you had a shared mission with them.
Our focus seemed to be the same, yes.
Right.
Which is to find Dylan.
And after Dylan was found, what was that focus that you shared with law enforcement?
Finding out who could have harmed my sweet boy.
Right. And your opinion that Mr. Redwine was responsible didn't change during this process, did it?
No.
One of the investigators, well, hold on. You testified earlier today that you drove Dylan to the airport in Colorado Springs, correct?
Yes.
And that was on November 18th, 2012, correct?
Yes.
And you picked him up at Joe Sabalos' house, correct?
Yes.
And I take it, we'll describe that process when you picked him up from Joe's house. Did you have to go to the door, or?
I went to the door and rang the doorbell, and he was ready to go.
And the two of you walked out to your car, I take it?
Yes.
And was Kristen Baird there?
I don't recall. I don't remember. They were always together, but I don't recall if on that specific day she was there.
Okay. And safe today say this is a day you remember this is the day you took down to the airport to come down here, right?
Yes.
And you described in detail that day for the jury.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound like you have a recollection of Kristen Baird being there when you walked Dylan to the car.
I don't recall. I mean, I really don't remember if she was there or not.
And then you also testified on direct about what your recollection was about what Dylan took with him on the trip.
Yes.
And your testimony was I think he had a black hoodie, correct?
I don't know if it was black.
Okay.
Because he had several hoodies. That was what he preferred over a coat. Actually, it may have been a maroon hoodie. I don't remember specifically what color it was. Actually, I think he had 2 hoodies.
And did you watch him pack for the trip to Bayfield, Durango?
Somewhat. I sat down on his bed with him while he was packing and just kind of reminded him of things that he needed to pack. And then I made sure that the items I felt were important for him to pack were packed.
Okay. So, and I believe you testified on direct that him being a 13-year-old young man, he was more inclined to try and pack himself.
He was, and he did pack himself. But I wasn't going to fight with Dylan over whether to bring pants or shorts or whether to bring a coat or a hoodie. Like I said, I made sure that he had like a pair of pants because he wore shorts even in the winter. Made sure he had his cell phone and his charger and his wallet so he could have some money while he was in the airport, things like that. But I didn't look at like specific clothing that he packed.
And again, your testimony today is that you were there sitting on the bed with Dylan, making sure he was packing the things that you thought were important for the trip, right?
I made sure, yes, those things that were packed, yes, in his bag.
And again, as we've discussed already, you've met with tons of law enforcement, done tons of interviews in this case, correct?
Yes.
And one of the investigators you've spoken to is investigator Tanya Goldbright, correct?
Yes.
And you met with her on November 23rd, 2012, correct? And I know I'm asking.
I don't recall the specific date, but I remember meeting with her in November.
Okay. And Well, do you recall telling Tanya Goldbright on November 23rd, 2012, that you were not sure what all Dylan packed for his visit, as he was old enough to pack his own bag?
I don't remember specifically saying that, but
Would looking at Investigator Goldbright's report, page 57 of Discovery, help jog your memory?
probably not, because I'm pretty familiar with, what we did, he and I together, as far as packing. And I guess you can take that context separate way, in many different ways. I helped Dylan get the things I thought were important, but Dylan did pack his own bag.
And you made that statement, and I get what you're saying, but my question is, do you recall telling Investigator Goldbright that you were not sure what all Dylan packed for his visit?
She's like, no, I don't need to look at it.
He was old enough to pack his own bag.
I don't recall specifically saying that, but I could have.
As the case went on, you also informed law enforcement that you had friends in Vallecito who were watching Mr. Redwine, correct?
Almay, feel free.
I don't know. I mean, I really never met a lot of these people until Dylan went missing. I really didn't have any friends in Bayfield.
Did you identify Miss Carrie Cochran to law enforcement?
Yes, Carrie. I did forget about Carrie. Carrie was a neighbor of Mark's that Mark and I and the boys had all gone over to her house and had dinner and such. So
And
I did call Carrie, yeah.
Right. And do you recall informing Investigator Goldbright that Carrie Cochran, whom you knew, was watching Mr. Redwine closely?
I don't recall saying that.
Would looking at Investigator Goldbright's report from the 23rd, 2012, help you recall if you told her that?
I mean, I guess. I don't know how to respond to that, because I may have said that. I know, that was right around the time Dylan went missing, and I was desperate, and I was reaching for anyone that could help me, give me some information about Dylan.
And as part of that process, you informed law enforcement that Carrie Cochran was watching Mr. Redwine very closely.
Again, I don't remember saying that she was watching him very closely. I could have said that. I truly just don't remember.
Do you know who Kathy Berry is?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury how you know her?
I met her through Dylan's disappearance. She came down from her home in Evergreen, I think, to participate in the search for Dylan.
And was she someone who you knew prior to your son going missing?
No.
Okay. And did you foster any kind of personal relationship or friendship with her?
Yes, we have become close over the years.
Okay. If I can have one moment, Judge.
You may.
Permission to approach and turn her attention to Exhibit 7.
Yes. April 7?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's safe to say People 7 is the bubble chat, the texts between you and Dylan on the 18th, correct, of November?
Yes.
And you can take it out of the plastic folder there. I think that may help to see what it is. And one of the comments you make to Dylan in the second green box from the bottom was make your dad wait, laugh out loud, right?
Yes.
And that's just kind of, what's going on with that comment?
Well, I was obviously worried about Dylan getting there and Mark not being there. So I wanted to make sure, I didn't want Dylan waiting on Mark. I wanted Mark waiting on Dylan for pickup. I didn't want Dylan standing outside an airport and Mark not be there.
And obviously, as is your right,
Real quick, I'd be like, objection.
Case, correct? You watched the trial.
It speaks for itself. Isn't that what the defense said?
The video of Mr. Redwine picking up Dylan there in the airport and meeting him. Okay. And you're aware of the compromising photos as well, correct?
I am.
And those have been shown to you by Corey and other sources, correct?
Yes.
And as you sit here today, you have no personal knowledge. You've never observed, you've never heard of Dylan confronting Mr. Redwine with those photos.
I didn't think I had time for college, but with WGU, I can earn an accredited degree on my own terms. A nonprofit university that lets me fit school around my schedule and take tests when I'm ready. I choose WGU.
All these ads, sorry.
I've never heard of Dylan confronting Mark with those photos yet.
Nothing further, Judge.
Redirect? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I'm going to take you through a couple topics that defense counsel covered in cross-examination, okay? So with regards to the trip to the airport when you're dropping Dylan off,
yes,
that was November 18th, 2012.
Yes.
You recall going the day before, November 17th, 2012, for the flight that was canceled?
Yes.
There's actually two trips to the airport.
Yes.
You testified on cross-examination that you recall making sure Dylan packed his phone and charger and iPod and charger.
Yes.
You recall also telling the FBI when they interviewed you that Dylan brought his iPod and charger as well as his cell phone and charger.
Yes.
Counsel had asked you about the Labor Day trip and asked whether Dylan had a good time. He showed you a report from the FBI. Do you recall that on cross-examination?
Honestly, that sometimes in my brain it gets confusing as to who was FBI, who was Plata, who was Bayfield. So I'm trying to keep it all straight, but it does kind of mesh together in my brain.
Okay. Do you recall counsel showing you the report during cross-examination about the Labor Day trip?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to refer to the same report, the same paragraph, same Labor Day trip.
Okay.
Recall telling the FBI that Dylan was happy with the trip because he got to see his friends.
Yes.
Recall telling the FBI at one point during the Labor Day trip, Dylan contacted you to tell you that Mark was at the Ignacio motorcycle rally, that Dylan was stuck alone at the Vallecito house.
Judge, I'm going to object. That's a different FBI report than the one that I was talking to the witness about, and I can show counsel what I'm talking about.
Well, why don't you show up, because I certainly have no idea.
Well, I could rephrase the question, John, and perhaps save us the
Well, you can try, Mr. As long as Mr. Bogan's listening.
Do you recall telling the FBI that during the Labor Day trip, Dylan contacted you to tell you that defendant was at the Ignacio motorcycle rally and that Dylan was stuck alone at the Vallecito house?
Do I remember telling the FBI that?
Or do you remember that?
I remember that, yes.
Do you recall Dylan contacting you during that same Labor Day trip and asking you to have a friend of yours pick him up from that house?
Yes. And it wasn't his house. It wasn't the Bayfield house. It was actually in Bayfield. He was stuck in Bayfield.
He being?
Dylan.
Was stuck where in Bayfield?
I'm not sure exactly where, which worried me. So I called a couple of my friends to see if one of them could pick him up, and then I would come up to Durango and get him.
On cross, counsel mentioned there was a contested hearing in September in which primary custody was awarded to you.
Yes.
Is that after the Labor Day trip?
Yes.
And you mentioned on cross-examination that you recall the defendant booking the November trip on the same day you were awarded custody?
I do remember, yes.
Switching gears here, okay?
Okay.
Counsel asked you if the reason Dylan did not want to go to his father's house for the November trip was due to a couple reasons. And he talked about being at the end of the road in the middle of nowhere and said that was one of the reasons. Is that right?
Yes.
Then talked about Dylan not wanting to sit around the house, and that was another reason.
Yes.
Fair to say there were others that you're aware of based on your discussions with Dylan?
Yes.
At the end of the cross, counsel asked you if you were aware of the compromising photos.
Yes.
And whether Dylan was aware of the compromising photos. Was he?
Yes.
What impact did they have on Dylan, to your knowledge?
He was devastated. It was humiliating to him. It was embarrassing.
You were shown an exhibit, now admitted into evidence, 1872. This was in, I believe it was February of 2013.
Okay.
Dylan goes missing, and you don't hear from him again, November 18th, 2012.
Okay.
Roll through Thanksgiving, December.
Are you interested in starting your own faceless YouTube automation channel, but all people do is tell you to go to Fiverr and Upwork and hire people to make rain sound videos, motivate?
January. And then this picture, if I recall correctly, was taken in February.
Yes.
What was the purpose of this visit to the defendant's house?
Trying to get answers, trying to get movement, trying to get something that would help us find Dylan. Answers from Mark we weren't getting.
During that time, you're also trying to get, or you're seeking answers about where your son's going.
Yes.
Counsel asked you a number of questions about later discussions you had with individuals in which you stated you believed the defendant was responsible for Dylan's disappearance.
Yes.
and then I'm going to switch gears one last time on you, okay? And just more for clarification than anything, the bag, which is introduced, or admitted into evidence as People's 13, contains articles of clothing and the pillow and pillowcase that belong to them. Yes. And counsel had asked you some questions before the lunch break about that, and I just want to make sure I clarify.
Okay.
Those were items that you provided to law enforcement as scent articles or things that may contain Dylan's smell.
Objection, foundation. I don't know if she knows the purpose.
She was asked by law enforcement to get that sort of thing, was what the testimony was this morning, so I think the foundation. Go ahead.
Dylan's smell for the purpose of canine searches.
Yes.
Okay. Then I should have clarified this earlier, but I realized during cross that I should clarify. And then you also provided other items for possible DNA analysis.
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Yes.
And is the ballistics that's been introduced into evidence one such item?
Yes.
Did you also provide a baby tooth of Dylan's for that purpose?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any questions from the jury? Okay. Ms. Hall, there's a question, but I do not want you to answer it. Okay, I'm just reading this into the record.
Okay.
When Mr. Redwine texted, he said he left the marshal's office, implying he went in person. When you called and asked if Mr. Redwine called, they said no. Were they assuming your question? Were they answering your question, or was the marshal's office saying he never made any contact with them? This is something that Ms. Hall really wouldn't have any personal knowledge of. It'd have to be a question for somebody else to answer. So I'm not going to let her answer the question. But with that, I know she'll be here. So, can you see the phone she'll be?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
She's not under service from us, Judge.
All right, you can step down.
Thank you.
Your next witness?
People call Ron Armstrong for the stand.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Y'all have to forgive me while I eat my little snack. I needed to eat. I had my vitamins, and you know, you got to have some food in there. Gail, I appreciate you being here, girl. Man, thank you. I'm so sorry that you, have those ailments, COVID. Man, it changed a lot of things, and if nothing else, I hope it helps everybody to take a little better care, of our body. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying, like, be aware of yourself and where we are, what we're around, all that good stuff. Oh, no, you're fine. Elaine just finished. And
Give
so I
amazing
think that
a
it would
little
just
more
be best to go ahead and wrap up there for the day. I know that on our typical, ongoing court cases that are current, we will sit here and watch the whole 8 hours, but this is the brilliant thing about going back and rewatching this trial. We can do it at our own pace, and we can really, absorb and take the time to just dive deep into it. So I'm going to end it there for the day. I appreciate you guys so much for being here. Welcome back to Facing Reality. It's me, January. Please like and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell so you'll know when I go live. Like I said, we'll start doing some evening time lives to kind of fill in the gaps and speed through this a little bit quicker. Some of the testimony is going to get, I don't want to say boring because that sounds disrespectful to Dylan and his family. I don't mean that, but there will be some times when, we're just going to kind of listen because it's the bunch of the defense talking their junk. So anyway, but I appreciate you guys so much for being here. Like I said, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. You guys have a wonderful evening. Tell somebody about Dylan. Have a great day. Bye.